doesn't sound right. She's 31. I guess that sounds right. Yeah, she was 2016. She loved it. She loved it there. They had a lot of good internships. Did you do anything good? Did you go anywhere?
Mainly I was like a research assistant for for stress and emotion.
Okay.
So I was
Yeah. Okay.
supporting the
It's a beautiful campus. Did you live there?
yes, I did.
She lived there 1 year in the dorm and then 2 years in apartments, and then she graduated 3.5 years, so she went back in a half a year in a dorm by the football field. She had her own room. It was really cool. So, we're good. I'm glad you learned something here, and hope you enjoy it. Yeah, if you can share with friends, we're going to be doing an internship program with VCU coming up. So Josh Smith is your faculty member. I don't know if you know him. You can Google him, look him up, get to know him. He's trying to get tenure, so his project is 9 months here with Heavy with the Ignite program, and so we're trying to build a reputation of this program that it can go nationwide with all the Better Business Bureau offices. And the other thing he's doing for us is Heavy himself, we came up with micro credentials. So after today's event, Heavy's going to tell you about micro credentials. Take the course and get the credential and be able to put it on online and everything. It'll be great on your LinkedIn. It'll be great with she goes to VCU for a master's, so it'll be great for micro credential.
VCU, nice.
And make sure you do a testimonial video.
Yes.
You could pretend to do it now, but it's kind of lying. But do it after the event to talk about the event, and that would be great. It takes 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's literally like a 30-second video, and I've got tips on how to do it here too. So.
Welcome. Something about Chris life. Big Chris. Insurance company that sells insurance, and then I just nice to meet you. Here's Amanda. Look for it. But I understand it's like for this person. I just want to know how safe the company is, what they're doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
never heard of them. Yeah.
I just want to know.
Never did.
We had so many people so excited to see me. Then someone was
Maya.
with me yesterday.
I didn't know about events.
Yeah, don't tell me that.
So what do you guys, where are you?
We are going to be doing it live right over there, and then I have two moderators comments on Instagram and Facebook. And then you'll be presenting on the whiteboard. With the TVs, we're trying to get a system where we can actually, on an iPad, do the same thing. But we haven't done it yet, but the whiteboard is great.
No, it's never like the stereotypical
How am I going to
model if it doesn't work in life.
So it's time to transition after Barry asks some questions. I will pull it up now.
Oh, what did you do? Awesome. I love magnets for their flowers and special for the like
So I already have
rubber but their flowers are really big. I remember.
Yeah, super easy. Touch screen.
They look like roses.
Much easier.
Written
When it's in PowerPoint and not.
I just graduated college and helping my family. I have 2 small high-tech jobs, not like an actual job when I clean houses.
I'll make
I
sure that I do
graduated
that
with
for
a
you.
mathematics degree and working
do you know when we
toward
started?
actuarial things. This summer I took summer course with
It's funny, I was actually
actuaries
making a comment to my coworkers
got
this morning and saying,
experience and a little bit of mentorship, and I'm continuing preparing for my exams because actuarials is like the people who have insurances with statistics, through statistics, understand the rates and how we need to adjust the trends, the data and patterns, and what decisions, like we basically mathematically show for data to push decisions in which we should go. And it's really hardly certified, so it's about 7 exams you need to get until you like have to be, there's like associate membership and membership, so we're working on exams. I tried one in September, but I didn't pass. I ran out of time
I will
in
be
the
right
half of my
there, so
task.
if
It's like
anything happens.
I think it's like calculus 2 apply for insurance, and just like haven't made
let me know.
any, so I want to redo it again in January. Meanwhile, the program
We'll wait for you to
give
know.
me
They're gonna probably be
from
starting the
Irish
process,
Pro,
so,
they give me free course to pass before December ends. So we will see. So a little bit there, like a little bit learning, a little bit on the family, because I have like 10 siblings and I just help trying kids, driving them to school. Yeah, as a job.
Yes.
What credit?
So.
I was like, and I was on vacation too, so when I came back, they had busted up the tables, and I was like,
24. Awesome. What do we do today after the event? Exactly. How many classes do you have? Are you part-time or full-time? Enough. I remember I took 14 and then 17 this semester. 17 was a really easy part. Oh, what classes do you have? Oh, I think you
I know.
So you're in counseling?
Yeah.
Do you have any minor? Any? So it's not degree? It's like certificate? Master's? Cool. You went fast. When did you get your bachelor's? Okay, so you're jumping in right after.
Yeah.
Good pace. Good pace. Shake. And so in your bachelor's was same in psychology or?
Yeah, it was in psychology.
Which makes sense. Usually, like you take bachelor's and you do general things, and then you more narrow the path and go counseling. Is there many people who need require counseling? What about market? Market. I mean, how many people? They're going to be a family counselor also.
Yes.
Okay, and so addiction courses don't really families to help a family to maybe and go there. Yes, our friends are. Where do you want to work? Do you have a company which you like pushing? Is it here in Richmond or is it local or? Wow. So it's like an internship? You said practicum? What is practicum? Is there a possibility that they can hire you afterwards? Awesome. That's amazing.
If you wanna go ahead and log on the
They have
Facebook
job
page,
fairs at the city as well? Or
Yeah,
you have,
are there any comments yet?
when you will finish the master?
Awesome. So as soon as people start commenting, just let
So
me know.
if they will suggest internships.
And then if they ask
are you
questions
gonna
and
wait
stuff
until
like
they
that.
graduate, or are you gonna work part-time with them?
It's really
Yeah, the console called right here.
Administratively, the work, so when I hold their What do you personally believe about how people change?
So yeah, we're gonna get it rolling. No, we can use the microphone at all. I don't think we're gonna need it today.
No worries.
Let people show.
Yeah, here we are.
You know the format? You got it. Did you attend one before?
No, I haven't.
She's, look at this. I bet you're not.
We tend to negative things from school. I'll never do that word.
How are you going today? It's okay. I did it on purpose. You good? Good. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? You get done. Take your time.
Actually,
My name is Jada, and I'm from VDH.
V.
Virginia Department of Health.
Yeah, okay, good meeting. I thought that's what you said. I wasn't sure. Good. Well, good. So where's your office?
So I'm in the Greater Health District, so Petersburg is where our headquarters is.
Cool. Okay.
We have a new overdose prevention program that we're starting.
Well, good. Good for you. You work with the sheriff at all?
We just did an event last week.
Okay.
Yes.
So you met Barry at the BBB. I've known her for years. I've done a couple of events with her over the years.
Yeah.
And I used to be in the for-profit world, so we used to sponsor stuff down there. And now I'm here with a nonprofit. I still go, but I don't sponsor. So it's a little different. So.
is it many people in your family? Yes. Chill. So old.
Tara, the timer.
Yes, sir.
Just keep you up at night.
Not a this doesn't keep me up at night. It's home life that keeps me up at night.
Yeah, that one.
Mom's oxygen concentrator was acting up the other night. I was in bed, almost asleep, and she's like,
We haven't had a problem in 2.5 years. I've been waiting for it to go
Mom
on.
does quite often because hers runs like constant, and she's on 5 liters, so like
Yeah, so she's
and
very
she
super.
doesn't make sure that her
What I say, what I eat, how
the
I
tubing
dress.
is unraveled, so there's kinks all in it, so I think it was like blocking,
Yeah.
and so it wasn't putting out air, and it dropped down to 2 by itself, and I'm like, Mom,
Right.
so I sat there and unraveled her.
We do the thing, we pull the cord and stretch it out.
Yep,
And,
that's what I do
yeah.
too.
So,
And so that's what I did the other night, and then
So you
it's
say
been
it's
working
OCU,
fine
right?
since,
It's
but I just was
masters.
like, Mom, I was really almost asleep.
almost.
She said, I'm sorry. I said, stop saying you're sorry. She is something else.
It's a lot of expense. Are you a nurse or is it an expense?
get started.
You're waiting on us,
Yeah.
Okay, so just move for a chat. So we will move.
Attendees today, come on in. We sit in the first row up here. Come in these two rows so we.
Okay.
It looks a little more attended. Come on over here, Crystal. Everybody get in these two rows here. And other than Tara, this timer, and that will run better. All right, so good morning, everybody. So, thank you for being here. We never know how many people show. They RSVP, and you say, they tell me it's because we don't charge that people aren't committed. If you bought a ticket, you'd show up, but we try not to do that, but that could be the case. But the conversation is important, so I don't care if there's only one person here. I think this conversation is critical, and you can take something from here, post it on social media, and share it with so many. So I'd like to, if the two of you can just introduce yourselves real quickly. Quiet. You just introduce yourself and tell them your background a little bit, and then real life will tell you who they are also. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Catherine. I'm Catherine. I'm a grad school student at BCU. I'm getting a master's in mental health counseling. And then I'm here because I'm taking an addictions course and sort of like how addictions impact families. And I thought it would be interesting to like take an event and sort of see like the community events around recovery.
Great. Good.
Good morning. My name is Jada Whitley. I'm from BBB, Greater Health District. It's at the Health Department in Petersburg. And we started a new overdose prevention program this year. So I'm just looking at other ways to connect with the community, ways we can get more resources out into our residents. Excited to be here.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. That's good. Just want to meet the two of you. You're the two attendees, so we want to know who's here that would help Dr. Scarborough and her team, and they'll introduce themselves shortly, and Andrew will introduce himself. But we're going to go through a couple questions, and anybody can answer these questions. The purpose of this conversation, you go to a lot of meetings, the distinction of Ignite versus all the other conversations out there is that we want to hear from the people, right? So it'd be wonderful to have 30, 40 people here, but we don't. But we go with what we have, and we still, because there's somebody you guys might be able to help, or we might be able to help and save somebody's life, right? It's that serious. It's like, I was thinking about today, what's the two most important things you have to have on this earth to live? What do you need? Water, oxygen, right? Those two things, without it. And so we're killing ourselves. We were talking a little bit about addiction and habits and what people do. People are creatures of habit. And the young folks, and you get older, you start to look at people, you say, do they not get it, right? So we are building data centers all over the country. And what do they use mostly of? Water, electric. So what are they gonna do to the planet and the oxygen and all that? So the green movement, right, we had one, we were addicted to it. We were chaining ourselves to trees. We said, don't do this, electric cars, all that. Yet data centers are popping up left and right because you know why? It's money. So why do the drugs and alcohol, and why do the cigarette manufacturers, why are the vapors, why are all these things that are creating lost souls? People are lost souls, and that's why they find different ways to keep themselves busy. So whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever other vice there is, when I interview people, I ask, what is your vice? And people look at me like, and I know they got something, we all do, right? And it's funny for people to be able to come out and say what their vice is very difficult. But the more you know yourself, the better you will do in business. So anyhow, we're gonna start with the recovery and staying in the recovery, and then our experts will talk. But what local support, anybody can answer this, what local support have you personally seen help someone stay in recovery, and how do they do it? Any examples? Anybody? You guys feel free to weigh in.
I'm happy to, but
Go ahead. Yeah. You guys got anything right now? Yeah, I think that both here are more learned. So you got the NARCAM, is that a big thing down in Petersburg?
Yes, so we're doing a lot of like revive training out into different communities.
Yeah.
Anyone who's like looking or to also just more, just the different concepts, just understanding what it is and the importance of it.
Got it. So the Attorney General, Jason Miers, was down there for about 2 or 3 years now, and the sheriff, and other groups.
Of course.
Real life might have been there, but we did NARCAM events and stuff, so we sponsored a table, and it was always interesting. But good, you want to answer that with all the sport? And this might weigh into, because of the size, you guys might want to put part of your presentation in here. It's not knowing what we do, but as experts, you might want to weigh in. So, do you remember the question?
I mean, this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all question, that's for sure, and there's multiple ways and pathways to achieve sobriety and recovery. That said, what research shows us is that people take 7 attempts before actually being successful. And by an attempt, it's not, I wake up this morning and say, oh, by the way, I don't want to use drugs. It's actually like getting a sponsor, going to a meeting, going into a program. And it also says that research also shows that somebody needs to be in some type of supportive services for at least 5 years. And that's kind of where the tipping point turns, where folks are 85% more likely to remain in recovery after 5 years of being engaged in something. And so when you think about that, and then you go back to the question of how do they stay in and how do they do it, clearly we're biased. We run recovery houses, but recovery houses that have wraparound support and last for 6 months or longer, to me, is a key component of the equation. Obviously, Narcan's super important. The 28-day treatment clinical programs are very important. Going to NAA meetings, AA meetings, smart recovery, whatever your pathway is all very important. But I think it does need to be coupled with something that's in a longer term because of what the research shows us. If I can get that word out.
Anybody else?
I'll add to that.
Yeah,
actually.
great.
I'm
Yeah.
myself.
We just use it so we can hear it, yeah. We just put it up like that.
So just to add to that as well, something that we've started and that I'm particularly doing is our linkage to care. So how we can connect the community to those resources, like you're saying too. And it just actually went live this week, so we're excited about it. But basically anyone could find our link or QR code in the community, you would scan it, and if you select anything related to substance use, to overdose, to revive training, or mental health, it'll get sent over to myself, and I'll be able to personally reach out to you, have that conversation, see what you're looking for, connect you to resources, and then from there continue that follow-up. So giving recommendations, and if that didn't work out, we can continue that support. So for that wraparound services, that ongoing support, that's a way we can continue to help our community, especially when it takes those illness and times to actually get to that point. How can we assist you and feel supported throughout the process? And then in addition to that, we have someone else who's more geared to the education side or housing or food insecurity. So you're getting other side of support that you might need in that immediate moment for yourself or your family.
Anybody else? Question 2 is up there. Who would like to give a shot at that one? What early signs of relapse could you recognize in a friend or a family member? Has anybody ever been through it? If you don't want to say personally, that's fine. But does anybody know the signs? Right, what can have you?
Hello, my name is Rachel and I'm a person in long-term recovery. Personally for me, the biggest sign that I'm heading towards a relapse, I kind of call it the pre-lapse, before you actually go out and use, is isolation. Like to answer the first question, like I would have said, any type of consistent support, whether it's the recovery house or Narcotics Anonymous, some people will just go to meetings every night a week and get a sponsor, whatever, like she said, there's many pathways to recovery and finding what works for you. I thought addiction, using drugs made me feel good at first, so I thought that gave me freedom until I looked down one day and I was literally in chains in a jail, so it doesn't give you freedom. And kind of creating that perfect storm of having enough pain and then being introduced to some type of support. My journey with real life began with incarceration, and before that I had so much time, in my home in Newport News, waking up sick every day saying if I could just stop the drugs, then I'd be okay, just like a way of abstinence. But finding that recovery is a whole new way of life and being introduced to it in incarceration and showing that, oh, there's people to help me with every aspect, and that's what real life does. You know, they help you with the housing, with programming, you know, with food. The real life thing, if you need a birth certificate, you know, I'm a little off topic, but getting introduced to things like that and sticking with it because you have the desire to. But for me, you know, starting to isolate is one big thing, you know, falling away from that, not continuing with that support and that community that is so important because, like they say, my best thinking gets me into those bad positions, you know, so I need guidance and you know, whether it's a sponsor or whether it's the community of Real Life hopping on an alumni meeting. And that's why I like Real Life because, you know, for me it started in a jail program they have, and then I decided to go to their 6-month recovery program, and then they offer alumni support, you know, and a whole program for graduates, and then a meeting you can get on with other graduates. So continuing in that path and continuing to grow and staying in someone's pocket who has what you want, you know, and just having those positive influences and everything is really important. So when I stop doing those things, I know with me it starts with isolation and starting to listen to the stinking thinking and the sick thoughts or the disease thoughts, whatever you call it. You know, if you look at addiction as a disease, I believe it all starts in your mind, you know, and your mind has to be in the right place, and you have to do things to keep your mind right, you know, so. And I've had way too much caffeine, that's why I'm shaking. So. But yeah, I mean, isolation is what sticks out to me. That's what it begins with when I start having those thoughts, and I don't reach out to someone and say, hey, my mind's being crazy, because it seems like that's its natural state, you know, like as an addict, my natural state is to use, you know, whether, you know, like you said, like it's a lost soul, and you'll try to fill it with something, you know, whether it's drugs, sex, food, you know, anything. So when I start to go towards that, it's a cycle for me, and you know, I can see that cycle starting, and it starts with isolation and listening to my own thoughts that aren't the best. So thanks.
Sounds like you have to know yourself, and when you get drugs and alcohol, you can maybe start to see yourself differently, right? So we go to heavy, but the one thing for both of you, I've known Dr. Scarborough a long time, and one of the things she pointed out when she was at Richmond City is, and if you remember this, and there might be programs, I hope there are, but there was a couple things. You can't get a driver's license, or because you know so much in fines, you get out. And they're supposed to get a job, but how do you get a job? In the city, doesn't have some of the transportation is better than it used to be. It's come a long way, but it's got to go a lot more. And the other thing was, if you remember this with Carlos, it was a telephone. It was important, telephone. See, I listened. That was years ago. And yeah, telephones and man, I was on one more thing, going back to your old environment.
Yeah.
Aziz Scott went back to his old environment, is now dead because he went back to his old environment. Why did he go back to his old, and you both need to understand this, the reason he went back to his old environment, and Sarah and a couple other people taught me this, which I didn't know, sorry about that. They go back to their own environment because the state or the city government subsidizes, do I have this right? And they subsidize the housing. He had a nice house, bought a furniture and everything. He was set with his family, and he went back to where he was comfortable and where it was subsidized housing. So the government believes they're helping, they're killing people. And literally, Aziz is gone. And you know, sometimes I take that personally because I really liked him and we tried to help, but it was phones, going back to the old environment, driver's license, anything else that was a key that people need when they come out of incarceration?
This sounds silly, but toilet paper was a big
Right.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have a lot of help, but sometimes the help is not with like the most fundamental things, and if you're getting out without anything, it was that we had not initially planned on, and a trash can. You know, like, you need a trash can in your home, and again, that's not something that's at the food pantry or that people think of, so.
Well, and from the cases we've seen, both from prosecution and defense, I know a lot of it is just rebuilding a methodical habit style. Ultimately, especially with addiction, when you're going through relapse, a lot of the things you see are ultimately, habits change very quickly. It usually starts small. You're 5 minutes late to a meeting, then you're 10 minutes late. You're not answering phone calls.
Yep.
It's little things, and part of getting that methodical lifestyle down is so important. And ultimately, it is a lot of teaching that you don't think about. I know real life deals with this all the time. Long-term addicts, there are things we typically don't think about that are second nature to us because we haven't been in that addiction process, we haven't gone through this process, but just little things, like you've said, all of a sudden they're out in the world and they need a support system, but there are things that if they've been in addiction for long enough, they've never had to deal with. Suddenly, all right, I usually find money where I can. How do I build up credit? How do I build up these things that either your parents, a mentor, something else would teach you, and it's getting that community around you ultimately so you can form these habits that are positive habits versus the negative ones that unfortunately can't control your life.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to that later on, habits and just in the workplace or family structure or friend structure, because there's a lot to be said there, I believe. Okay.
So I'm in this role because I came here because my brother was falling into a crowd of people that were addicted to drugs. And even though he promised he was not actively doing them, right. So he looked at me one day, and I'm the oldest of 3, and he's the only boy in the family. And he said, I need to get out of Harrisonburg. And I was like, okay, let's go. So that's how I met Barry, and I got this role. And it has been a blessing because I've met people like Andrew, like Dr. Scarborough, where I learned so many things. So now when I see my brother falling back into those habits, I notice the isolation. I notice the breaking of habits. And I've made it my goal to be aware of those things that he's doing, because I was, even though people would say, you're such a good big sister, I was a bad big sister because I wasn't noticing what his habits were that he was falling back into, those bad habits. And so now that I know more that I do, and he's back in Harrisonburg and he's doing better and he's working for our family businesses again, he looks at me and he's like, can we like go do something? Like I need to get out of the house. He gets overwhelmed by our dad. I mean, Greek dad, of course, right? Anybody would. But he'll tell me, he said, I need to get out of the house. Do you mind if we go away for a weekend somewhere? And I'm like, let's go. Like I will drop everything and I will go with him because his support now is his siblings. And that's how I want it to be. I want him to know that he can come to me or our sister if there's anything that he needs.
Any other question? Very good. Anybody else? There you go. Question 3. What language or phrases feel supportive versus stigmatizing when talking about recovery? I'd love to hear from both of you guys, or all 3 of you, because you've obviously lived it, and you guys are looking to get into that space to work with clients, right, and help them through this. So, anybody want to go on this one first, or as a person that does what you do, you want to start?
I would say the real life people deal with this. From my end, in Henrico County, we have recovery courts, we have mental health dockets, so we try to create a safe community around them. Ultimately, from what I do, sometimes you have to be a little negative, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. In terms of supportive phrases, I think one of the things we try to impart constantly throughout the process is, yes, this is a disease. This is not you. This is not you as a person. And this is not who you wanted or who anyone else wanted you to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most important thing that we try to reiterate over and over, that just because it is an addiction, just because it's a disease, it does not define you. Mm-hmm. And finding a way to define yourself in the world around you, I think, is the most important thing we try to build from my perspective. But I'm sure real life has
awesome.
a bit better answers.
It was a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
You have
I
any
think
share
that
on
was a
that?
great answer.
Yeah.
Don't undercut yourself.
Want to just say second whatever he said?
Yeah, who knows?
Guys got anything?
Steve, you want
Yeah.
You don't have to.
My name's Steve. I'm a recovering addict. I really think the communication and language is very supportive. Nobody wants to hear they're an addict, an ex-addict, but hearing a person with substance use disorder and people looking at you on a human level and not just calling you an addict and writing you off, seeing that you're a person with a problem and helping you. Through my peer recovery training, I learned a lot about recovery supported language, and it really helps. So, just seeing me on a human level instead of an addict and writing me off, because I had a lot of people do that for years until I got help.
That's awesome.
was gonna say pretty much the same thing. I just finished the PRS, course, well, the test and everything, and the 72-hour training, so I'm a certified peer recovery specialist now, but in the training, it talks about the language of saying, you know, like, because there's a lot of co-occurring disorders too. People don't just have a substance use disorder, they also have, you know, mental health issues. And so instead of saying that person's crazy or that person's a junkie or something, like this is a person with a mental health disorder, a person with a substance use disorder, you know, not just identifying them as that disorder, you know. And it's hard because, you know, it is a disease, but it's cunning and baffling to me as well, because I'm a person with multiple felonies and stuff, and it baffles me to look back on the things that I was doing, and I don't even understand it, you know. So this type of disease, the problems that it causes, you know, are so terrible. And, you know, it's not the same as cancer, diabetes, you know, the side effects of this disease is you could kill somebody, you could die, you know, like, and it's hard to not look at somebody, you know, as a stigma, you know, because I've seen situations where people get in a car crash because they're under the influence, and someone innocent dies in the passenger seat, and it's very hard to look at that person as someone with a disease, as someone who's not selfish and everything like that. And, you know, I've been pulled over, you know, for overdosing in my car and everything. That person could have been me, you know. I've been in so many dangerous positions. So it's hard not to look at people with stigma when things like that happen, you know. But yeah, just using person first language, you know, this is a person with a disease. This is a, you know, not a crazy person or a junkie or whatnot. So I think just identifying the person, because it is hard to find who that person is, you know, without the disease, because I felt like, yes, it was a choice to use, but I didn't have a lot of experience on what happens. You know, it seemed like I could smoke marijuana or drink alcohol without too much trouble. But once it got into the opiates and the benzos and the things that started happening in my brain and the decisions I started to make was disease, you know, and they're not things I would do today. So it's hard not to, you know, I became a liar and a cheat and a thief, you know, and so you start to identify as those things. But now today I'm a person with integrity, you know, and honesty, and like, so people, you know, when they're in addiction, they try to say, oh, I want to rediscover who I am, and I didn't ever know who I was, you know. I always felt lost and, you know, didn't have a lot of guidance. I was never hurt, but I really wasn't paid attention to as a child, you know, so I tried to figure it out myself, and that didn't work out too well. So this is, you know, this way of life is figuring out who Rachel is for the first time, you know, and even in going in Narcotics Anonymous meetings saying, you know, I'm Rachel, I'm an addict, I don't really like that. I understand, like, it's humbling, and I know that, like, my way of thinking, like, I am an addict, you know, it can go back to that. I feel like I've lost the desire to use today, you know, so, I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but, yeah, just using person first thinking and you know, giving somebody a chance to find out who they really are. And, you know, I'm a good person today, you know, and I feel like people in recovery can be the best people, you know. They're very empathetic because of what they've been through, and it's just such a loaded situation, you know, with all the stigmas and everything you go through, and trying to find out who you really are, and realizing that I am a good person. I'm a person with a substance use disorder, but with the desire to change and the right support, I can be a contributing member of society. And it's terrible what happened. A lot of terrible traumatic things have happened to me, but it's still a blessing, you know. My personal belief is that God can turn any situation into something good. And so as somebody who was born with no direction, now I have an ultimate purpose to help people, because now I'm staff at Real Life, thanks to Sarah, and I get to go into the same jail that I was an inmate at. You know, I was just there yesterday, and I get to help women who are in the same exact position that I was. And it's about the effort, not the outcome. You know, I'm there every day to help people, but that's the hard part about it, is it's ultimately down to the addict to have the desire to change. And, you know, they say when the pain gets great enough, you'll try something different. And I was in so much pain, I didn't want to hurt myself or anyone else another day. And like I said, it's like a perfect storm. It all happened at the right time, where I was in that pain and I was introduced with the resources to do something different. And I've been doing that for about 3.5 years now, when before I couldn't go 3 hours, so.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I just want to add something real quick. I would say that negative recovery language, being called an addict or a junkie, it really takes your hope away. And in recovery, one thing you really need is hope. And just hearing it break down to you're a person with a disease, you know, it really gives you hope that you can fix your issues and work them.
Great. Anything else there? Yeah, good. So I covered this on the last Ignite conversation. I forget what it was about, but you know, it's a little bit of witnessing. And when we were in Richmond City Jail together, I remember standing up in most of the male, not the female side, and looking at the men and saying, I'm white, you're black, don't judge me, I won't judge you. You've been trained to judge the other side, just drop it. Because that's where these stigmas come in and these blame game, you know, whether you're born with an addiction or you get it from dysfunctional life or trauma, I don't know the answer to that. You know, my mom grew up in a traumatic life, and I grew up as a child, you know, with her abuse, and she was completely nuts sometimes. And then she had a heart and soul, and she would come back with the tears and everything. And sure, it led me and my brother down a path that could have put me where you guys were. Why I stopped, I don't know. But I will tell you, the biggest thing I think that I've learned in all these programs is that when you think you're in control of your life and it's all about you, you're gonna fail, because we're humans, we're not perfect people. But again, if you find Christ and you put Christ in the center, and that's why all these programs, I believe, are successful, because I think you lead people, and you mentioned God, and I think you get there with a relationship bigger than yourself, right? You look upwards and you're not seeing yourself in the mirror. It's not up to you, you know, there's a bigger power. And so when you take that pressure off yourself, and I've seen it, so did you spend time with Carl? No? Churchfield or no?
Virginia Peninsula Regional Jail.
All right. So, Carl and I are very good. You've been to the HEART program or no?
Have
visited
been
it?
there, yeah,
Okay.
for a graduation one time.
Yeah,
I'm
pretty
familiar
powerful.
with it. It's
Yeah,
great.
pretty powerful. I remember when he started it, and we were good friends, and it's come a long way. And then I just fast forward to the chapel. I go to church, and we were in the HEART program this summer, the hottest day of the year, in the courtyard with the screen over in the basketball court, right? And people are getting baptized. I wanted to get baptized, just get in the pool, right? Because every other day, there aren't jumpsuits, they're jumping in that pool, getting saved, and there was a transformation there. Now, whether it's with everybody, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the judge. You know, they got to judge themselves, but I believe it was real. So I think that's the power of programs like this. So remember this, what you guys do, it's not about what you can do. It's not about her MBA and her, it's about her experiences and her heart. And her experiences are, how many people? A couple thousand minimum, right? Maybe 5,000, 10,000 you've dealt with. And it's the way she went to work every day. And we all have that choice, right? So you guys are now up in, and we all are out in the world. We go to get jobs, right? And we're so excited to get a job. But that's where the downfall could be or the uptick can be. Because places of employment, right, are bigger than this, many more employees. Time management goes right out the window. I'm on the clock, I can talk the rest of the day and do nothing. I can play on my cell phone. Worst thing you can do all day long is this, kiss of death. So you want to be productive in society, and you want to make a good paycheck, and you want to move up a ladder regardless of your background. And remember to tell people this in 5 years from now or whatever. Get rid of this. During the day, get rid of it. Stop hanging out in the huddles, because nothing good is going to come from BS conversations. It's only negative power. I tell the stories, I was in the car business, so the staff has heard me talk about this a lot, but we had a gazebo out in the lawn, and that's where everybody went out and commiserated. The pack was pretended as a pack of cigarettes. I've never smoked, so I don't understand the addiction. It's kind of crazy, but, and the money part, right, forget it. But the code at the mechanics level at Haley, the technicians was, or even salespeople, and the service manager used to do this because he never smoked. It was this. They had that. And what did that mean?
That's right.
Meet you back there, baby. We're going. It's the stupidest thing. So you try to walk away from addictions, and we do it back to ourselves in a place of business, which then leads us down another possible bad path. You only got 24 hours in a day. You cannot get everything done in life Have you learned, we had 24, if you did time inside, 24 hours had to be endless, right? I mean, it never seemed to end, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's depending on what you fill your time with, but I made
Correct.
my own recovery program in there, so I was busy.
That's awesome. And so you got to, that's why these programs are huge. There's a lot of knockoffs of doing what real life does. A lot of knockoffs. They take money out of our society. They pretend to be experts. They go to him. They want to be at the county level and, oh, send me people, raise money with me. Help me raise money. The money's not helping these folks. I'm sorry. Now, I know you take some money to do your program, but it's the expertise. It's bringing people back as peer mentors, or whatever your titles are, to come back and work with other people that you can help them grow. So this can be fixed if we continue, but the problem is there are so many imitators out there, emotional nonprofits that started, and they're gonna come to you and they're gonna say, hey, come to work for me, or hey, State of Virginia, Department of Health, I need some money to fund this Narcan program. You raised $100,000, $200,000 with every golf tournament, everything. Took away the awareness of real life, and I'm not endorsing them, but I am. But there's other programs like Real Life out there all over our country. So don't get distracted, because that's what life is, all about distractions, all about the huddles at work. People walk around, and you go to your jobs and just watch. There's people that walk around aimlessly. There's no purpose yet. You ask them what their tasks were for the day. Well, I don't know, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Or, oh, I got a whole page. There's not enough time in the day, Barry. I can't get things done. That could be anywhere. But if you fill your time with good things, great things happen, because you're going to make a difference to somebody. You know, this is a program that we committed to, and we believe in it, and we believe that we're going to change. It might just be one of the two of you might become the best at what you do 5 years from now, because you met these folks, met Anthony, met Evie, and heard this conversation. Okay, so let's see here. We're gonna do one more, and you're gonna be ready to go. Anthony goes, or Andrew goes first, or Sarah?
Sarah can go first, because
Yeah.
these are the questions for Sarah, and then the
Yeah.
other ones are for Andrew.
What's the biggest barrier to staying in recovery in our community right now? Any experiences with that? You see people back in court? Drug court, in Chesterfield, drug court, I remember sitting on that, and when, I can't think of the term, the Judge Rockwell or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is definitely not a one size fits all, because I think each person you ask is going to tell you something different. But if I did have to generalize this, I think if somebody is given a good opportunity to pursue a route of recovery, which could be, 25 different things that could be great, I think the biggest barrier is themselves. I think that a lot of it leads to almost an aura of arrogance, which in a lot of ways is completely earned, right? Like, you've been doing X, Y, and Z for so long, couldn't go 3 hours without using. You've now gone 3 months without using. I've got this. I'm good to go. I don't need this recovery house with all the rules. I'm really tired. I probably don't need to go to my meeting tonight. I'm just gonna, right? And so they are their biggest barrier, I think, because almost that confidence sits in, which we want, but that confidence leads to an era of complacency, which then leads to not engaging on that path. And since I think and hope we're all in agreement that addiction is a disease, you stabilize your diabetes because of your medication, your diet, etc. Awesome. The worst thing you can do is stop the diet and stop the medication, because then what's going to go back, right? And we're not necessarily medicating addiction with, sometimes we do with medically assisted treatment, but regardless, if you stop what got you sober, you're likely going to end back where you are.
That's a great answer.
Thanks.
That's real life.
Thanks.
That's real life. You want to take over, or go ahead, and then you guys go. Just take it from there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that didn't even occur to me at first, but definitely reminded of that. There's a lot of language in Narcotics Anonymous, saying like, when you think you've got it, your head's not in the right place, and I feel, like I don't feel like I've got it. I just know that I'm doing the right things, and I can tell that, my head is in the right place. But yeah, getting that confidence, and like she said, it takes about 5 years of a change of life to to, you know, become a person that stays in recovery and to have it stick. And, you know, Narcotics Anonymous is the same way. They, you know, they call you a newcomer until you're about 5 years clean. So 3 months is pretty much nothing. It's a huge accomplishment, you know, but it's just the beginning, you know, and people graduate from these programs like, oh, I graduated from a 6-month program when you've been using for 5, 10, 15 years, you know, and so I can't wait to get to that point where I've been as clean as long as I had been using, which was about, you know, 10, 11 years, and I'm at about 3.5 right now, so I feel like I've just got my feet in the door, and I feel like that's a really good perspective to have. That's definitely, I think, the biggest reason is you know, the biggest barrier is somebody's thinking and their perspective. And also, I think that life is just hard. It's hard when, you know, your whole way of life was using and getting that instant gratification. You know, if I hustle up $50, I get a hit, I feel great, and the whole thing starts all over again. Whereas when you come into recovery, oh, I have to do these classes day after day. I have to pay rent every single month. You know, I have to pay a program fee. I have to keep doing this. You know, it kind of reminds me of like my daughter going to the first day of kindergarten. She was so excited, and she came and she went, and then the next day, on the second day, I got her ready for school, and she was like, I have to go again now. Like, she was not like, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be an everyday thing. And she was just like, you know, it was terrible for her to realize that, you know, but she got with it. So just realizing that, yeah, it takes consistency. And when somebody is going through all these factors of, I owe $5,000 in court fines, I have to pay rent, they're garnishing my wages for child support, or, you know, like, so it can be so overwhelming because life is just hard, you know, so having the perspective of, you know what, I have to face life on life's terms today, and this is reality, and, you know, everything's not going to be handed to me, just realizing that and deciding that, you know, this is just part of what goes with living a real life, you know, is doing those things, and it's just too much for people sometimes, and they just go back to the easy way, you know, and to me that isn't easy, you know, using and getting locked up for months and years at a time, but people just can't play the tape all the way through and see things for what it is, and like that's what's going to happen, so they just go back to that instant gratification and they give up all that consistency. So I think that's another big barrier, is just not being able to deal with life.
I'll add, so I was a peer house leader of the program for about 8 months, and I would add on that the biggest barrier is people themselves, because I'd have people in there that'd been halfway through the program, and they'd be like, oh, I'm leaving, and it would be either a girl or a job, and I'm like, that job's not going to matter if you relapse. You know, you're in the environment for a reason. This program's been around for years. These people know what they're doing, and they care about you. And that job that's so important to you right now ain't gonna matter when you relapse in 2 weeks because you're not doing meetings, you think you got it. You know, I've been in recovery since May 26, 2023. That's my sober date. And I go to NA meetings, and to this day, I still get a lot out of recovery meetings, but I don't speak at them yet because I feel like I haven't learned enough about NA to even speak at a meeting. But I get a lot out of them hearing the older people speak, you know, and I don't get that mindset that I got it figured out. You know, I'm clean now and I can do this thing on my own, because I definitely can't. And real life has saved my life, building a community around me. First time in my life I've had people, I feel like people actually cared about me, so.
Well, my name is Nicole Pratt. I recently started working here, and I just asked if I could speak. It's only my 4th day, but it's fine. This is only my 4th day, but at the same time, I feel like this is a family. Abby said the way that she got her job was family in recovery, or trying to be there for them. I got this job by being honest with my boss and telling him my story. And my story is a little rough around the edges. I've been clean and sober since 2006, but at the same time, I had to do time in prison for that. And it was not easy. So I understand, you know, and you're talking about the barriers of people not believing in you, you know, and then you lose belief in yourself. And I'm shaking because I'm nervous, and probably too much caffeine. But I new to the area, looking for that job, you know, trying not to lose that faith. You know, I am a firm believer in God, and it only takes that little mustard seed, which I was losing, right? And then coming in here, not knowing anything that's here, you know, but accepting this job so that I can learn. I feel that if I stop learning, I'll probably perish, you know, like I love to learn. And so I took this job instead of going back into the facilities, but yet I can still do that. You know, I'm from Idaho, so I was doing that there, the peer mentorship. The officers became my best friends, now moved up in the ladder, took me with them. Those are the best people that I've ever had in my life, people that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That barrier is very rough. Coming in here, Barry believed in me. Whether I believed in myself or not, I still showed the confidence that I had it. You know, I just watched a TikTok's TED video, and she said, "Fake it until you make it." That's what they usually say, and it's not. It's fake it until you make it, or until you believe it, right? So I'm faking life until I make it and become it. I don't want to be one of those statistics of, well, once you've done this, you're gonna come back, you know? And that's that barrier for a lot of people in that, whether it be, like you were saying, food addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, sex, there's so many people that are addicted to so many things, but yet, you know, nicotine, but yet they.
I wasn't talking about you.
But at the same time, when you have one addiction, mine's energy drinks, cigarettes, vaping, those are my addictions now, which I feel are good addictions because I could step in the wrong direction. And if I do that, it's that barrier, those statistics of, oh, this is your 7th time back in, why? It's because they can't do life on life's terms. You know, life on life's terms is hard. I want to cuss so bad, sorry. But life in life's terms is the hard way. If you want to do something easy, it's everything you've already known, right? So I don't want to do things easy. I want to step off the ledge into the deep end and not knowing where it's going to end. And that's where my recovery begins.
Sounds. All right, so we'll hear from real life. Wherever you guys want to take it for like up to 20 minutes would be wonderful.
Okay, perfect. So before yesterday, my conversation was going to be a little bit different, but there is some new data from the Department of Health that came out. And so I told Evie when I walked in, I was like, oh, well, this allows me time to get on my soapbox, so let's go. And being in Henrico, and Andrew, with you being Henrico, so you probably heard in the news several months ago, the governor announced that overdose deaths are down. And I don't think that you can fight the numbers, deaths are down, and I think we will all agree that that is really great. The problem with that statement is a lot of people just, you know, we're doing good. No, we're not doing good. We are doing great because people are not dying, but that does not mean that drug use is down. And that is where a lot of people are mistaken. Just because less people are dying, that means Narcan is working. That means doctors are able to revive, right? It's not because drug use is down. And so, I mean, we know we're beating the path, right? Every single day. You see it in the courtroom, how addiction just wreaks havoc every single day. But the common person does not see it, and they see these statistics and they are completely misleading. And, well, we don't need to focus on that anymore. We don't need to spend dollars there anymore. We don't, right? Henrico County so far in 2025 has had the most overdose deaths, right? And Henrico prides itself, as they should, I'm not disparaging Henrico, let me be clear, on all of the addiction recovery pieces that they do. And in many ways, Henrico is an innovator in a lot of areas. So how do these two things line up, right? I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one goes back to Barry, I think it was question 3, when you were talking. Henrico battles a problem with random pop-ups that are here, recovery here to serve. And they are rundown hotels that just plop people in them, right? That's not conducive to productive recovery in any way. I think another big piece of it is, well, Henrico's all short pump West End rich people, right? Henrico doesn't have any problems. So a lot of the focus, not necessarily from the county locality itself, but from philanthropy, from programs, things like that, the focuses are on Richmond City, because that's where it all happens. On Petersburg, and that's important because there's a slew of problems there, right? But if Henrico is number 1, I want to say Richmond was maybe 5, don't put me on that, I can look it up in a moment. I don't know where Petersburg fell, but I can look it up and send you all the VDH links if you want. But I think that just shows, as a society and as a community, where we need to do some more focusing on, and maybe, I won't say reprioritize, because I think that our work means that the statistics are getting better, if that makes sense, but I think it does lead to the fact that people are still dying, and addiction is not over. Substance use disorder is not over. People are using in droves, and we need to focus on that instead of just looking at the number of bodies that are dying versus not. So how do you capture that in numbers? Who knows, right? There's not a tally sheet of, well, did you use today? Did you, you know? So that's very hard, but I think listening to people that are in this space is really important. I will get off of that soapbox and kind of move on. So as you all probably have figured out, if you didn't know, we provide recovery housing. We do have 11 houses in the city of Richmond, although we do serve folks from all over Virginia. We'll randomly get folks from outside of Virginia, but mainly Virginians. The biggest thing is you gotta be over 18, you gotta be willing to commit, and you have to get to Richmond, which if you want recovery housing and you want to come to real life, getting to Richmond is pretty easy. We'll figure that piece out, right? I think a lot of people ask, you know, what's the special sauce in your program, or what makes it unique? And I really think that it is our approach, which is a very holistic approach, right? It's not just well, get a job and everything's gonna get better, or get a sponsor and go to a meeting, right? It really is a holistic approach that starts with that behavior modification. And that behavior modification is not going to take place if we don't get to the root of what started somebody doing what they were doing, right? And almost all the time, it is rooted in adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. So really looking at what happened to that child, or what happened to that person as a child, how did it affect them then, how did those addictive behaviors start then, and then how did they manifest until where they are now in real life, or incarcerated, or wherever they are. And so that's hard, right? Asking somebody to, well, everything that you have ever buried and ever numbed by all the drugs, let's go ahead and talk about it, right? It's really hard, and it's really daunting. And I think that that is a lot of times when folks end up leaving our program, because they're like, I'm not going there. This is really difficult. I don't want to be left to feel, right? But I think that those that are the most successful are the ones that will go through the yucky, hard stuff and kind of let it bubble over, and like, let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Let's figure out how to cope with that, while also figuring out how to cope with things that are happening today, because life is still hitting, right? Like, it doesn't slow down, it doesn't stop, especially in our society today. And so really getting to the root of that, while coupling that with things that are just the more fundamentals that we gotta live. You gotta pay your bills, therefore you gotta have a job. You might have a boss, not Barry, but people working otherwhere that you don't really like, or that maybe aren't the nicest or something, right? But you need the job. So what do? Do we cuss them out? Or do we figure out how to work with somebody in a more productive manner, right? talking about budgeting. Rachel mentioned I gotta pay my bills and pay rent every month, right? So it's coupling that behavior modification and just that entrenchment there with the basic fundamentals. What I would also call a basic fundamental is teaching people how to have fun. And that sounds weird, right? But when you talk about the disease of the brain, it's, you mentioned, Andrew, like literally retraining habits. It's training your brain to do something different when you're in situations. But a part of that training is how do we have fun, right? Because boredom is the devil's workshop. And if you're not having fun, well, that's a problem in your brain, right? And so I'll never forget, I met somebody, it's been years ago, at a coffee shop downtown to go over job interview stuff and go over resumes. And they said, is this what you people do for fun? And I was like, well, yeah. You know, when you think about it, us people do go to coffee shops. You meet a girlfriend there, you whatever, we just chit chat, we have fun, we giggle and go on our way. But for somebody that has battled the disease of substance use disorder and their dopamine, their pleasure center hits are so incredibly high, something as mundane as sitting at a coffee shop does not give that. It does not give those hits. And so it really is helping folks retrain their brain and allowing them to engage in pro-social activities so that they can, again, learn how to have fun, which also translates to what? Their families and their children. And I think we're all here for a reason because we care, but at the end of the day, go back to the majority of the people that adult programs serve, whether it's Real Life or another program out there, because there's a lot of other awesome programs out there, the majority of the people have children. And I think if I'm asked the best part of my job, it is when men and women are back in the lives of their children as God designed. And so if we can restore all of that, and I hope you don't mind me ratting on you, Steve, but Steve has, once they graduate, there's a whole slew of requirements that are required to become an alumni. And every year we have an alumni dinner and they get like their alumni jacket, which is kind of like your Letterman's jacket in high school, and it's a big thing. So Steve and Rachel are making alumni next week. Yay! So exciting. Or you did last year, sorry, you'll get your first badge. But they get to invite somebody. And so Steve's brother is coming, and he's not seen his brother for 12 years. And his brother also has custody of his child that he's also not seen, right? So when you look at and I have chills talking about it, I'm gonna try not to cry, right? But when you look at that full circle, it really is a reminder of why we do what we do every day and why we like go through the trenches. Not everybody is gonna be successful at recovery. Some people are gonna have to try a lot. Some people, unfortunately, don't have an opportunity to be successful because they passed. But for those that do, that's why we do this. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you all want to add anything.
I just want to say that I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she was in my custody until she was 9, and her father passed away. He was also an addict. He was someone who I'd been with since I was 16, and the trauma of my life in 2020 was so bad. She went to stay with my cousin for about 4 years, and through my change of life and my recovery and everything, I regained full custody of her. It was a year in July, so she lives with me now, and she wants to go to Yale, and she gets straight A's, and she wants to be a psychiatrist, and she wants to get us, like Real Life offers scholarships for children, and she's like, can I get, I need volunteer hours and everything. So Real Life is really just an all-encompassing program. Whenever somebody, people need a job, we have an employment workshop for the men and women, and he was talking about building credit. We go to the Credit One workshop and learn about how to build credit. So it's just it's an amazing program. But yeah, they were talking about children and everything, and that's another thing that happened in my life is I got my daughter back, and we're so happy.
Yay. Steve, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll add. Real Life has taught me a lot of things, starting off with the behavior modification. When I first came to Real Life, I got a job at a restaurant, and I did really good at that restaurant, and the manager made some false promises. I got to where she said I needed to be for me to become manager. It didn't happen. The old me in 2 minutes would have quit and walked out. But I kept that job for probably 3 or 4 months, kept going to interviews until I found something better, and it made me change my way of thinking. It really did, because the old me would have just gave up and walked out. But I knew I had to stick with it till I found something better. Then, you know, it's really a big deal for me getting to see my brother. He's a lawyer. I never thought ever he'd be back in my life. And that's a huge thing for me. I gotta thank Sarah mostly in the program, because it's definitely changed my way of thinking and my way of living. And I love going to work every day. I love helping people, and I want to do this as long as I can, because I really feel like I'm making a difference now, helping the men in the program and everybody in the program. So thank you.
Any questions? Let me ask you, the word love, right? It's lacking, obviously, at times when we go down to bad places in life. How long does it take to get that feeling of love back? Does it come back 100%? You've seen thousands. And I always go back to C.T. Woody, because I learned so much, and he used to say every time it's about family, get your family back, whatever that meant. I mean, the families they didn't even know where their family was, right? But it was always about family. But that love, does it come back easily, or is it a struggle?
Do you mean like your family's love?
Loving yourself, loving your
Okay.
family,
That's a
loving the
struggle.
world. I mean, how long does that take, and what is it? How can society help? Because politicians don't have the answers. So how else do we do it?
I mean, when you were saying, you know, what 2 things can you not live without? A little cheesy, but like the first thing that came to my mind was love. You know, you need love and community in your life, and I mean, personally for me, my family is very forgiving, and you know, the way that I was introduced to the jail program in real life, you know, like I was surrounded with love and support. I'm very blessed to have a supportive family, and you know, I feel like love from others because I, you know, locked into this new way of life. Like I said all the time, like it is what you make of it. If you do the bare minimum, I feel like you get the bare minimum in return. But you know, if I put my all in, I feel like people see that, and I feel really supported. The love for myself, that takes more time than anything, you know, because there's still, you know, feelings of guilt and shame. And like I said, there's a lot of bad things that happened to me and that were caused by, you know, my choices. And that was a big thing. It seems so simple. When I was in jail, I was like, oh my gosh, my choices like dictate my life. Like it seems so simple, but I was like, wow, you know, I started setting goals and everything like that, little ones, and seeing like that I could accomplish them. And then setting bigger goals, you know, that's why I love like looking back on the real life curriculum book. Like I look at all my goals and everything, and you know, back then, and it seemed like so big, and I would never, you know, accomplish it. You know, things like talk to my daughter on the phone once a day, you know, in jail, and now, you know, we're together every day, and I have full custody of her and everything. So I feel like the love part for myself, it comes in waves, you know. Sometimes I love myself, and sometimes I feel like I don't like myself, you know. Like I feel like that's a big part of, you know, why I chose to use this, because I've always been very uncomfortable in my skin, and you know, like didn't feel like I was worthy, and you know, so sometimes I do feel like I don't like myself, I'm too weird, you know, and I think that's something that a lot of people deal with. But I think keeping your side of the street clean and having integrity and doing, you know, it's like we have a like a mindfulness Zoom on real life, and you know, it's like a meditation, and the lady says, she's like, I build my esteem by doing esteemable acts. And you know, like you start to feel better about yourself when you start, you know, making better choices and doing better things. So you know, I do interviews for a lot of the people trying to get in at real life, and I don't know, maybe I wear my heart on my sleeve too much, but like a lot of times when I first meet people, I tell them I love you, you know, and I don't do that to them. But, you know, like when they get accepted, you know, I say, I believe in you. You can do this, you know, like just because I know, like for me, if one person would have said that to me, you know, like, okay, I'm not alone. Somebody has faith in me, believes I can do that. So like, I'm a very loving person, and I feel like covering somebody in love is I mean, a huge part of, you know, helping them believe that, you know, I can try this, someone else believes in me, someone else has done it, you know, I try to share my story, you know, I was just like you, I was just in the same position and I did it, you know, if you want it, you can have it, but you have to want it, you know, but, you know, adding that extra, you know, aspect of, you know, letting someone know that you care about them and believe in them, like I'm big on hugs and everything like that, like I like to cover people in love, and you know the Bible says love covers a multitude of sins, and that's how I look at it. Is that, you know, you can just cover up a lot of hurt and pain and nastiness and stuff with love. So I feel like that's a huge part of what we need to live.
I think with the loving myself part, I learned to love myself a little bit more each day. It really started when I started keeping the promises I made myself of getting through the program and sticking with the job till I found a better one. Then with my family, you know, when I first came to the program, I would text my dad and brother about once a month, you know, being like, hey, I'm in recovery, I'm doing this program. Then the more they saw me move up and get better and engage in recovery, then become a house leader, assistant house leader, then become a peer house leader. Then when they saw me graduate and decided to stick around, that texting them once a month turned into, if my dad doesn't hear from me within 2 weeks, he'll shoot me a text like, hey, I love you, dude. What are you up to? Checking on me. So I see that with time and putting in the effort that his love came back, and me and my brother text on every other day basis now. So.
I'll ask one more question. I've learned this from Sarah, so I'm not going to ask you. I'll ask to you and anybody else in the room. And for you guys that are going to go into this field or you're working in Petersburg, I think the love question and all that is important. But society is trying to deal with this now at a different level. When I was in the 1960s, 70s, you know, we didn't talk about suicide. We didn't talk about 988. I carry it everywhere. People still don't know what it is. Do you guys know what it is?
No.
Suicide prevention and mental health crisis. So you always call 988 first. It's free. But anyway, what is it like? So Sarah helped me, and helped me a lot hiring people, right? Because we realized you had to get a job. You had to get off that couch. You had to do your hair. You had to look good. I don't care if you were, I always go back to, was it Justin? The Mongol?
Yeah.
From Chester, is it Justin?
Yeah, Justin.
It's amazing. So I told the girls this at the office, I'm a pretty big guy, right? The size. I'm a dwarf compared to this guy. And I got off the 6th floor at the jail. Mike was bigger than me. He's like built like you and I. And he's standing there like this. I didn't see any human being behind him on the 6th floor except for this tatted up. I mean, he had tats up to here probably, right? Or in the head and everything, shaved head. And I'm like, oh Jesus, I'm gonna die tonight. This is it. I'm in jail. This is gonna be it. And they're not shackled. They're not anything, right? They're there. And Mike steps away, and I look at Jess, and I'm like, this guy. But if he can only get a job and right and get him back in the place of in society, I don't think that ever was his fortune in the future. I don't know.
He's actually doing well and is a bodybuilder.
Praise God.
Yeah, he
Oh my
lives
gosh.
over near Virginia Union.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, yeah.
I would have bet against that.
Yeah.
I have to go see him again someday. But anyway, he was there to talk to somebody in like a scared straight type mentality. Sarah put us in an office half the size of Crystal's office. With, you remember that? It was like 6 people in the real life program. Doug Grunke and his son, 18, that Mike Wade wanted to put away. He was waiting until he was 17. He wanted to wait until he was 18 so he could lock the kid up. So they kept letting him go, right? And this kid was on radar, and we helped him. And CT Woody, if you remember, sitting in his office, this young man, and that man has done great, I'm told. I've lost track of the dad and him, but I heard years ago he got into a peer mentor program, and it wasn't with Harp, it was with one of the other programs. So my question is to you guys, for employment, how important is it to get off the couch, get dressed, whatever the uniform might be, whether it's this suit and tie, or a waiter, does it help you get into the workplace? Could that be the solution to help people grow and not go backwards as much. I mean, it's, you know, you could answer it, but you already told me and you helped me understand it. So, and I think everybody needs to hear that, because not everybody's employable in their mind, and not every employer is willing to give an interview.
I think it is really a healthy thing to get people back into the workplace, because when I started the program, it actually took me a little bit to find a job. You know, I was doing good with the programming, but in my own mind, I didn't feel like I was making it that far. Then when I started working, you know, it gave me something to look forward to every day, and that was big for me. That was really big, to look forward to going to work. Then I would look forward to coming home and doing my classes, doing what I needed to do. And it really gave me that sense of purpose for myself, because I was able to start paying back my fines and my restitution and making a difference. Because, you know, I completely own up to the debt I owed to society, to the things I did. And at the time, I wasn't starting to pay that back, but when I started paying back my fines and my restitution, you know, it really made me feel like I was getting somewhere.
I feel like it's, there's so many, you know, pieces that go into a successful recovery program, and having a job, especially, I mean, you know, at the men's employment workshop we do, I'll speak to a man who's 45 and try to make a resume for him, and I'm like, you know, what jobs have you had? And I've never had a job, you know, and it's like, well, how, you know, but, you know, then we get to talking, and in prison, you know, they did landscaping and stuff. It's like, okay, you have had a job, and try to, you know, build that up. So for somebody that has never held down a job or has not been successful at one, you know, I served tables my whole life from the time I was 18. I did retail, and then as soon as I turned 18, I started serving tables, but that looked like scrounging up enough money to go get a bag at the end of the night. You know, that was my life, and I did the bare minimum. I showed up late. I tried to get out of there early. I stole from other people there. You know, it was a hot mess, for lack of better words. So when I got into recovery, I said, you know, I really enjoy working with people still, but I can't be working night shifts. I can't be in a bar, you know, so I still wanted to serve tables because that's what I knew, you know, so I got a job at a diner while I was at Real Life. And I went in at 6:30 a.m. and got off around 3, and it felt really nice to, you know, have it, you know, I ended up becoming assistant manager, and I was counting the till out and everything. I said, wow, this is different. They're trusting with money, and, you know, I deserve to be trusted with money, you know, like down to the penny. But that, you know, and it's like different stages. I didn't want to keep doing that. I think it's also very important to have a job that you're passionate about, but, you know, we say you have to get a job before the job. I couldn't serve tables for the rest of my life, you know, that would be one thing that would, you know, send me back out or whatever, because doing something repetitive and mundane that's not serving my spirit. But knowing that, you know, like I said, life on life's terms, I did that for a time. I think I worked there for almost exactly a year. And then doing what I had to do, you know, doing the certification to become a peer specialist, and, you know, getting involved with alumni. You know, for me, it's just walking in God's way. You know, I keep bringing up Bible verses and stuff, but, you know, it's like you'll hear a voice behind your ear saying, this is the way, walk in it. You know, I don't know what the end result looks like, but I'm just going to keep going, you know, and now I get to fulfill my dream of helping other addicts, you know, because like I said, I like interacting with people. You know, back then it looked like serving tables, because even if somebody asked for a side of ranch, you can improve their day by just bringing it right back, saying, hey, I hear you, I see you, you know, I know you need this, here it is, you know, I'm listening to you, and talking to people. You know, a lot of people will tell you their problems, so, but being able to ultimately, you know, serve people now, that have, you know, the decimating problems that I had and everything, and being able to play a part in that. So I think an important part of it is, yes, in the beginning, it definitely counts. Don't turn it into your new addiction, which is what a lot of people try to do, is I'll just work all day, you know, and then, you know, where's your mind at after that? Where's your, you know, after you lose that job, or, you know, but, yeah, just continuing with it, and sticking with the journey, and finding what your passion and your dream is, you know. I feel like having a sense of dignity is also one of the most important things, and having a job and being able to pay your own things and right your own wrongs and everything, like that dignity helps someone keep going. But that's part of, like, an important part of a recovery program for me is, what are your dreams? You know, they say lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise. I think that's an important part of, you know, finding what you want to do, like finding a career one day rather than just, I just know personally for me, it wouldn't be helpful for me to go to the same job day after day after day after day and not get anything out of it. Like that, the end result of that doesn't feel good to me and it isn't fulfilling. So doing that because you have bills to pay in the beginning if you have to is important, but also starting to work on what are your hobbies or dreams or, you know, I saw like a meme on the internet. It's like, I don't like when people ask me what my dream job is because my dream is never working or, you know, but you know, you have to work. So finding out, you know, what would be your dream job and how can you get there and setting those goals, you know, because I just know I couldn't work a dead-end job day after day and be happy. So, you know, finding how do you get to that place is a fun part of recovery. And like you said, looking at it as fun, you know, you're like, it is fun for me to help people. It was fun for me to do all the things in my recovery program. It was fun to serve tables and work towards what I want to do. But some people look at it as a chore, and that's a big part of it is your perspective, is do you want to build a life for yourself? Like, if it's not fun to you to try to find a career and everything, then I don't know how to help you, you know, but yeah, just if you want to build a life for yourself, and you know, I think finding a job that is like spiritually fulfilling for you is very important in the end game of everything.
What else can we do for real life? What opportunities for volunteers? I know you need money. We got that. I'll get that out, right? You're gonna take, if anybody knows anybody that knows somebody, share real life, and it takes dollars to run it. The chapel has been a big help as a church through the HEART program, bringing people out of the HEART program and then into some kind of life there. But what are your activities, your volunteerism, mock interviews?
Yeah, I mean, there's some events. There are events, so come to our events. But opportunities for volunteering for sure. We do have a great staff. More than half of our staff is in recovery and graduates of our program, so we're very, very proud of that. And I think that's a testament to what we do. But we do operate with a lot of volunteers, whether it's helping at the men or women's employment workshops and doing resumes, or helping them with technology, that type of thing. There are events that, you know, to attend, whether it be our gala, our golf tournament was just this past Monday, those sorts of things to either attend or volunteer and help with. We also have, you know, tying us with speaking engagements like this. You know, obviously we definitely want to get the real life word out there and the mission of real life, but even more so just discussions about addiction. The other side of our nonprofit is violence intervention work. So we do a lot in that space too. So just knowledge, being a resource. I will say we, on both sides of our nonprofit, we do not charge. We are the only organization that allows everyone to come in for free so that finances do not dictate whether somebody can seek recovery or fleeing violence. And so, you know, any sorts of referrals or folks that need help, you know, we certainly are always open to that too.
Great. Thanks very much for real life. Awesome. That'd be awesome. So I will say, and we're going to get into the next segment here, but I will say fun was something I was going to say. I bring it up a lot of times on interviews. I bring it up to people I work with. You got to have fun. And you walk around and you're so serious, you're so stressed. You want to hide your mistakes. You don't want to share it because you're scared to death that you're the first ones ever made a mistake. If you made a mistake because you're just careless or an idiot, own it, right? Yeah. But other than that, I mean, just, you don't have to apologize. So that's an important part, but have fun. And it's always a way to have fun. Really is. Politics, politicians, folks, work for a county, they're not the answers. They're not the answers. They don't know anything that we don't know. They go in, they don't do a lot of research, they hear the copy points, which are they're fed deaths are down, deaths are down. The governor, the attorney general, right? Like them all. But what they're saying is inaccurate. You know, and I get my info from Carl, who's my inside, and he's like, this is not true, right? It's Narcan, and I can figure that out. That being said, I will tell you the story. You know, always remember this, and you'll be able to use it out in events like this. UNOS, everybody know what that is? United Network of Organ Sharing. So you die, I'm an organ donor, my heart, my liver is going like this, my eyeballs, they're gone. And I'm saving somebody else's life. morbid? No, it's a great gift of life. And Lisa Schafter was one of my best friends. And we used to sit around and talk about this. And they started, and I was in the car business, and she'd yell at me after a bourbon or two that, you know, we're not seeing as many organs. What's that got to do with anything? Your cars are safer. Airbags, the distraction going into the other lanes, there's less car accidents. We're not pulling organs out of car deaths. Think about that, right? And so how it changes. So that's, you can use that story, Narcan, they're all relevant. And so think about that in an industry that people need those organs. We don't want the death, but if the car accident was violent, it helped provide life for 4 or 5 or 8 other people. Think about that. So we're doing better, but now the people might not pass away. They might be in a coma the rest of their life because the airbag saved them. Well, no organs available then, and they need stuff. So anyway, the world is crazy as technology changes, medical changes. Morbid, I don't think so. I think it's real life. You got to understand. Everything goes back to real life, just so you know. Anyway, with that, we're going to ask one question, and then you take the stage. So, who should lead coordination between schools? This could take 2 hours if we come up with this answer. Who should lead the coordination between schools, families, and programs, and why? So, I'll pull up the question. It's a great question. Debbie makes all these questions. It's pretty intense, and I already give you one answer. It's not our politicians, not Janet Kelly at the Department of Health, although she can help. It's not the education department. This is real life. This is real people that have to figure this stuff out. So anybody want to go?
Sure.
You got to do it. Good for you.
So, I think this is a difficult question because I don't think there is a good answer. I don't think, in the programs we've seen and programs that have grown through public and private systems, through the court system, through the government, the thing that we've found the most effective, I would say, is multidisciplinary teams. We currently have ones for juvenile, we have ones for drug abuse, we have a couple for several different issues. And what we found is when there's no leader, when it's the Commonwealth Attorney's Office meets with program directors, meets with social services, meets with family members who have issues, all together collaborating, then you get the best outcome. If there's one specific group saying that I need to be in charge, ultimately what that does is other things get left by the wayside. If the Commonwealth Attorney's Office is the one handling everything, there are things that we just don't know, or things that we can't focus on that social services can, like getting them resources that they need, making sure that they have benefits, making sure that they have Medicaid, making sure that they have insurance. Those are things that we can't do that they can't do. If they are only the focus, then there are issues that they will miss that we have to focus on, like are they going to the programs on a regular basis? Are they being adequately supervised? Are there things we can do to make sure that they can ultimately be successful? And I would say ultimately, there can't be a singular leader because of that. There has to be a team community around in order to adequately address addiction at all levels.
It's a great answer. Anybody else want to tout that one? How are you? Welcome.
How are you?
What do you do?
My name's Ralph Pollard.
Larry, how are you?
Good to meet you.
Yeah.
I am the executive director of Rifle Too Smart to Start Coalition.
What is it? I'm sorry.
Rifle Too Smart to Start Coalition.
Okay.
And so we focus on youth substance use prevention.
How about that? Good timing for that. Yeah. Anybody else want to take a stab? Tough question. No answer, that's for sure. And Carl Leonard will tell you in Chesterfield, the one thing he doesn't want is more people coming from your offices sentenced to jail when they don't belong. They need recovery programs and or they need mental health issues. And you know, he constantly says his deputies are not mental health providers. They can become, if you want to school them, educate them, hire him double the staff, give them the right space, or we got to do something more. And we're in a busy time right now. We have to make some serious decisions moving forward. But it takes people that understand, going to school, learning, doing what you're doing in Petersburg, learning, you helping the youth, you sentencing people or working with people. So with that, I'll let you take over. Got to introduce yourself and tell them what you do.
So, while she's getting the PowerPoint set up, my name again is Andrew Climo. I'm Assistant Commonwealth Attorney with Henrico County. I've been working there for a little over 2 years now. I work in the juvenile and domestic relations building, so I deal mainly with cases involving juveniles, domestics, families, and those types of cases. Before that, I was a public defender at Winchester for about 2.5 years before I came down here. I'm originally from Chesterfield, so born and raised here, so happy to help the community around me. So I've got a brief presentation. So addiction in the court. Everyone can admit court's scary. No one wants to be there. Frankly, there are days where we don't want to be there. But there's a lot that the courts have done and can do to help the addiction process. Now, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily early intervention, because typically if someone is in the court process, it means things have been tried or things have not worked. But a lot of people have fears about what the court system is, a lot of the time because unless you go to school for it, unless you're around it constantly, families, individuals, people, they just don't know what happens when they get to the court system, what the court system can do. I can say there's still always growth to be done through the court system to help addiction, help mental health services, but we, I would say, have come a long way from the 80s and 90s and 3-strike rules, where ultimately people are just getting locked up forever without a solution. So going through, of course, the general question, what is addiction? I focus on alcohol for Sober October, but addiction, it comes in 2 forms, substance abuse disorders and behavioral addictions, and these are conditions that ultimately affect every aspect of your life, where you cannot meet meaningful relationships or do anything that a normal person could do. Ultimately, if you look at alcohol, the definition for alcohol addiction for men is more than 2 drinks a day, or between 15 drinks in a week, and for women is 4 more drinks a day or 8 drinks a week. Now, as we all know, addiction is treatable. The sooner we can get to it and the sooner we can get people around in collaboration, we know that addiction can be very effectively treated, but there are always going to be steps. When we look at who addiction affects and how it affects the court system, we know, of course, it affects the individual. It's a daily struggle, and it will be a daily struggle for the rest of their lives. Now we look at the partners around them, the people who are trying to support them. It affects them on an everyday basis. The children of someone who has a substance use disorder or a behavioral disorder is very trying. I see it day in and day out, and we know from what we see, we like to think children don't know, but they always do. They're smarter than we give them credit for, and unfortunately that's what typically sets the cycle in stage. You see children who go, I know something's wrong. They might not be old enough to understand exactly what they're doing, but they see mom or dad doing something that affects their ability to raise them, and they see it and they know it, and it helps, and unfortunately creates a cycle where they will most likely end up in the same process. Family members as well, whether it be it through they're trying to help the family member with a substance use disorder, and they can't do what they think they can, so it creates family struggles, and unfortunately situations where if you're in a full-blown substance use disorder and you're using on a daily basis, you're gonna find a way to build that addiction, whether you like it or not. And that could mean going to a family member, asking for a loan, going to a family member for making quick money, or even doing something that we all know you regret, which is stealing from family, stealing from the community around you, and causing harm to people so you can continue to feed that addiction, because that's the only process you were thinking of at the moment. So when you look at statistics for intervention, you actually notice something very interesting. The vast majority of ways that people get through the treatment process or to early intervention, about 35% is through family intervention, and another 35% is through the court system, actually. Those are the 2 largest ways that intervention is typically handled. We'd like to think it's through medical intervention, but that's actually a very low statistic. It's typically around 3% that go through a hospital and medical setting that ultimately go through intervention at an early stage. There is a large portion of people that seek self-help, though that is collaborated with family intervention as well. Now, looking at the court system specifically, the court can only get involved through 2 ways. For adults, it's if you've been charged with a crime. That's when the court system gets involved. Now, with juveniles, there are 2 other systems. They can order a petition, which is a juvenile version of a warrant, which means that they have been charged with a crime and that they could be found delinquent. The other way that you see a lot more today in these court is called a CHINS petition, or a Child in Need of Services petition. And that can be filed by the school, it can be filed by the court, it can be filed by my office, or it can be filed by a concerned family member. And what that does is, it is not a criminal punishment, it is civil in nature, and it allows the child and the family members to come to court to talk about issues. Ultimately, there are a number of things the court can do in a CHINS petition. They can order psychological evaluations, they can order mental health evaluations, they can order substance abuse evaluations, and it allows the juvenile to get these services in place, and it allows the family to get these services, typically through Henrico Mental Health or another service, before criminal charges need to be brought. So you'll see these cases a lot in terms of, it's not the term we use anymore, but truancy, kids missing school all the time, kids in areas where they shouldn't be. This is where CHINS petitions will typically come in. Now, determining who qualifies for treatment in court, of course, if you're charged with a crime involving drugs and alcohol, the court will always look towards some form of rehabilitation. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily not going to face jail time or something of that nature, but in the typical day and age, any probation series that has someone charged with a crime will involve some sort of substance abuse use disorder treatment, or at the very least probation with regular drug testing to make sure that they are maintaining and provide services through their probation officer. The other way is through the court services that I'll talk about later, but typically to go into those recovery programs, you have to be diagnosed with a substance abuse disorder that is considered moderate to severe. So let's talk about what is the court process. Most of the time, I'm sure as you have seen or dealt with, most people come to court and for arraignment is what they call it, but they don't even know what that is. They come to court thinking that the first time they step in, it's either going to be a trial or they're going to be held. They just don't know how the process typically goes. So typically what would happen is a person will be charged with a crime. There are two ways a person can be charged with a crime. Either an officer shows up and sees a crime being committed or has enough information to find probable cause, and they will issue a warrant. The other way is through a citizen's complaint, where a citizen goes to the magistrate and says, this person did something to me, and if the magistrate finds probable cause, then they will file the warrant and it will be served on the defendant. The other way is through direct indictment, which is through a grand jury. A grand jury meets once a month in every county, and they get a list of charges that they can determine whether or not there's probable cause. If they determine that there is, then the grand jury sends an indictment or a warrant through the circuit court on that person. Once that happens, you can either be arrested if they determine it's a high enough felony or a large misdemeanor that determines that you need to be brought to the jail immediately, or they can issue a summons, which means you will come to court for arraignment. At arraignment, what happens is the judge, if you're held, will determine if there are bond conditions that you can be let out, or if you're held, they can, or if you're out, they can actually add things as well. There are two types of bond in Virginia. There is a personal recognizance bond, which means that all you have to do when you're held is sign out and say you will come back to court. You do not have to pay anything. The other form is a secured bond or a cash surety bond. What that is the court sets a monetary amount that you have to pay in order to be released from jail. Typically, so a good example is you can either pay it yourself through a family member, or you can have a bail bondsman. If you pay it yourself, so say I'm given a $200 secured bond. If I have a family member pay it for me, they have to pay the full $200. They can get it back once I come back to court. The other option is I can contact a bail bondsman who puts up the money for me, and when that happens, I have to pay the bail bondsman a fee, typically around 10%. Once I pay that 10% or $20 to that bail bondsman, he keeps that $20 and the rest goes towards my bond. One of the things that the courts have done through the bond system and through pretrial is there are a number of things they can order right off the bat. So before your trial even starts, they can order you to undergo mental health assessments, they can undergo competency evaluations, they can have you on regular drug testing and alcohol testing, they can actually order you to go under substance abuse evaluations ahead of time so they can get programs in need. There are also other things they can put in place to make sure that you are where you're supposed to be. Typical GPS monitors. Lately, there are SCRAM bracelets, which is another form of monitor that detects alcohol in your system. However, we don't use them as frequently because, admittedly, they are very expensive. And the person who uses a SCRAM bracelet has to pay out of pocket, and it can cost several hundreds, if not $1,000, if they're on the bracelet for long enough. So that would be arraignment and pretrial. At that time, you are given a lawyer. If you are considered indigent through the court, or you can hire your own. Then it is set for trial. At trial, you can either plea or and have a full trial. A judge can determine whether or not you are guilty or innocent. And once that happens, if you're found guilty, you are convicted. If you're convicted, the judge can do two things. One, he can order just a straight up conviction with a jail sentence and any other services he deems necessary as part of your probation. Or he can enter what's known as a deferred disposition. And a deferred disposition is where the judge finds that there's enough evidence to find you guilty, but he does not make a finding at that time. Instead, he puts services in place, he or she, and it could be mental health counseling, it could be mentoring, it could be therapy, it could be probation with regular testing. If you follow through those conditions, what a deferred disposition ultimately allows is the judge to not convict you of that crime, so you have nothing on your record. But that depends on the circumstances of the case, what your criminal record is, and what else can be done. So in Henrico County specifically, there are a number of different programs that we have built throughout the years to hopefully help with the addiction process. The one in the jail is known as the RISE program. It's a 6-month-long program while you are in the jail. You are there the entire time, but they deal specifically with addiction and addiction use. They will go through the program with you, and they will work with you on a daily basis. Outside of the RISE program in the jail, we have the Recovery Court, formerly known as the Drug Court. This is a court that specifically deals with persons convicted of felony possession. And they typically have to have a record where they're looking at time of over a year. If they enter into the drug court program, it is typically 12 to 24 months. During that, though, to be honest, I've never seen someone do it in actually 12, typically it's closer to 24. But through that program, you will meet at the court weekly. You will get regular drug and alcohol testing. They will also help you with a number of things. If you have medication concerns, they will help you get medication. They will help you find jobbing and housing. They will go through that process with you to ultimately get either the charges dismissed or have an all suspended sentence, so that way you're not getting another felony on your record and hopefully getting a new process starting forward. A newer court that we've opened up in the last year is the mental health docket. So these are typically out of the general district or the lower court, and they deal with misdemeanors or felony assault and batteries of law enforcement that can be amended down to a misdemeanor. They will also help with substance abuse. However, in order to be part of the mental health docket, a substance use disorder cannot be the main contributing factor. It has to be a mental health diagnosis before the substance abuse disorder. In addition, it's not on this slide, yes it is. We have a veterans docket now that is also through the general district court. That docket deals entirely with veterans, and one of the cool things about it is they work directly with the VA hospital to get them services through the VA that they may be entitled to, but because of their addiction issues or other issues, they haven't been able to fully benefit from those services. In addition, we do have Henrico Mental Health, similar to our VHA, the Richmond Health Services. Our Henrico Mental Health is great. We work with them daily. They allow for walk-ins. You do not have to be charged with a crime in order to go to Henrico Mental Health. You just have to be a resident of the county. And once you're in, they will help you however they can. So I mentioned briefly a deferred disposition or an adjudication. As I said, it's a way for a judge to put in certain guidelines and things in order to hopefully get your charge dismissed. In the juvenile courts, our goal, especially dealing with juveniles, even ones with addiction issues, is always rehabilitation. So it's called an adjudication, but it's the same thing where the juvenile would be found that there's enough facts to find them guilty, but the judge will hold off on sentencing. The vast majority of juvenile cases go this route because the goal is ultimately to get the services in place so the juvenile doesn't have a record, because we don't want someone coming out as an adult being a felon on their first day of being an adult at 18. So the benefit of a deferred disposition is typically you will be out. So you will be out in the public, so you have services you can work with that are not through the jail. In addition, it allows the family that you're around to continue to support you. Family members try, but it's hard to support someone other than putting money on commissary when they're in the jail. There's not much else you can do to support. In addition, again, you avoid a criminal position, but you still have court supervision, so there's another layer of supervision rather than just through the programs that you are at. Now, we we do have to talk about, because it's my line of work, is there any benefit to a conviction? I would say there are some things. It's never good to be convicted of a crime, but there are a couple things that can happen if you're arrested and ultimately convicted. One, the court can order the defendant to not partake of alcohol, partake of drugs as a condition of their probation. For some people, it can help. For some people, it can hurt. It can go both ways, but at the same time, it allows an extra level of supervision. In addition, while you're in the jail, like through the RISE program or other programs, there are some things available. I would say that is more true of juvenile detention rather than the adults. We're getting there, but it's going to take time. You can get programs through probation. They will help with housing. They can help you find jobs through job fairs and things of that nature. In addition, I know it can sound simple, but at the very start, when people are arrested, if they're held, it does give them time to sober up. You'd be amazed how many people I've talked to, both as a prosecutor and a defendant, and a defense attorney, who said, frankly, if they're a daily user and they're using every day, all the time, it's all they think about. And even 48 hours of just sitting and time where I'm not gonna lie, we all know there is a way to get drugs in the jail, there always has been, but it's harder, and it gives them time to sit and reflect. And the amount of people who have said, the time I've had to think about this and just sit there with the worst headache of my life, the worst feeling, that was my wake-up call moment. And sometimes, unfortunately, that is what it takes. We always say in court, through the drug court and through other programs, everyone's rock bottom is different, and it's different for every person. The decision to make a change can be different for every person. It could be the first time they get arrested. It could be the 10th time they get arrested. It's never going to be the same for any person. Now, going through the juvenile court petition, it's a little different because it's through petitions, similar to a warrant, except a juvenile has to be found delinquent. They'll be given pretrial. There are a number of other services that juveniles have that adults can't have. They can be put on a monitor through outreach, which is a form of probation. So it's a GPS monitor that they do not have to pay for. In addition, there's a VJCCA, which is a lower level monitor, but similar for that. For juveniles specifically in pretrial, they can order them to undergo mentoring services right off the bat. They can order them to undergo, similar to adults, substance abuse evaluations, psychological evaluations, things of that nature, while they're waiting for trial. They can also order regular checks. So with juveniles, if they're placed on a monitor, they will have to come to court every 30 days before trial, and the judges will look at things and other factors. They will talk to the family members, say, how are they doing in school? Are they going every day? Are they waking up on time? Little things that you typically don't think of, but help build that structure over time. If they are found delinquent, that is the term for being found guilty as a juvenile, there are a number of things that can happen. Similarly, the case can be taken under advisement through a deferred disposition. They can enter in what is known as the Post-D program. That is a 6-month-long program in juvenile detention where they will be at the jail, but at the same time, they will undergo strict counseling, strict mentoring. They will meet with the courts again once every 30 days throughout the 6-month period, but they will work with them on education. They will work with them on if they need a GED, getting them a GED. If they just need to help their grades. They will give them intensive therapy and mentoring that they can get once they complete the program. In addition, they will work with family members to have family-sustained therapy to help the family dynamics build, because a lot of the times in the juvenile cases, what you see is, on top of the fact that there are mental health issues and substance abuse issues, it is not just located directly with the juvenile. Kids are habits in nature. They learn from their parents, and a lot of the times, some of the issues they are dealing with, their parents are dealing with the exact same issues, but do not have the resources to address them personally. Now, once the juvenile has been put in the court system, on top of helping the juvenile, they can help the family dynamics as well. And unfortunately, worst case scenario is they get committed to the Department of Juvenile Justice. They will get services there, but that is similar to juvenile prison. As I talked about the recovery court, that is a program that I know is both in Henrico, Richmond, Chesterfield, and throughout the Virginia It is one of the best courts. I know in Henrico specifically, our success rate is around 99% of all people that enter through the recovery court to never have less recidivism. Similar to our mental health docket, although it is new, we have great success rates. And one of the great things I find about the recovery and mental health dockets is that one of the things that the court has changed a lot is recovery court specifically talks about, one of the first things they mention to everyone who comes in is, yes, you may have a substance use disorder, yes, this is an addiction, yes, this is a disease, but that doesn't mean you're not gonna have missteps. A lot of the time in the early 2000s, 90s, even before this, it was hard to be an addict in the court system because the first time you had a positive test in many counties, and that can still be true to this day, the judge's answer was just to throw away the key and say, we're done. But the recovery court and the mental health court make a point of saying there are gonna be missteps because recovery is a long-term process. There are gonna be relapses. There are gonna be times where you do what you're not supposed to do. Now, the key is honesty in these courts. If you come up, if you own it, you say, hey, I have a problem, I had a bad day, I used, then they can get the services in place, they can help you more. And once that happens, they will continue to let you still allow you through the court process. And that's a newer development in the courts that you really have not seen in the past, I think is very important for the addiction recovery process. So, that's my spiel. Any questions?
Come a long way.
That's great, super helpful.
Do you see that difference?
No, I mean, I cannot disagree with anything that he said, and I think, you've got a lot of advocates out there that say, jail is so bad, and do we want someone locked up, whether you're a prosecutor or not? The answer is going to be, well, maybe there's some old school thought, but generally speaking, the answer is no. But the number of people, and you even said it, that are like, jail is what saved me, right? And so I think that that's definitely like a misnomer out there with some advocates that say it's so bad, no one should go, prosecutors are the devil, but people who have been there, oftentimes that has literally saved their life.
So what you do for a living, remember this quote, and you'll remember, I'm not gonna get it exact, but CT would say, send me an average criminal and I'll take him in and make him a great criminal, or something to that effect. And they, for somebody who never did time, I didn't understand that in the beginning. But boy, the more I would go, the more I would see it and understand it, so pretty powerful. So she was key, it's very good. Anybody else? It was great.
I'll
Thank you
say,
for your- Go ahead.
that and the whole process that he explained was like, this is what Rachel went through. Like, it's like if they want to talk about triggers and stuff, I was just like, I'm gonna run out of here. I'm like back and forth because.
Do you want to add anything? Did we miss?
I mean, no, like, but I'm like my last day of active addiction, like where I use drugs every day. I was gonna go through a horrible withdrawal process. Was August 11th of 2020. I blacked out on Xanax and walked into a few houses and stole a car when I had a car. It sounds absolutely insane. I don't barely remember the entire night. But I was arrested that morning and I detoxed in Newport News City Jail. And I had to go through that. I was not ready for a program. It literally felt like an exorcism, getting all that stuff out of my system. I still woke up with sweats about a month later, getting all that junk out of me. And I did pick up again after that. I was in jail for 10 months. I got the Real Life program the first time coming out of there in 2021. And I drank a beer after a month and I was exited. And because my mind, like I said, it takes about 7 times. It took me a few times. My headspace at that time was, I'm not injecting heroin anymore. I can have a beer like I used to, even though it's against the rules and everything. But with those breaking and enterings that I went into the houses and everything, that was like 11 felonies. And they gave me, they told me it was a withheld finding, is that the same thing as a deferred, finding. I had 2 years to complete the Real Life program, and I messed everything up, but they did try, and I got all those felonies. They took away that withheld finding, but they did try, but I just wasn't in the right place for that. But I definitely believe that, I never went back to active addiction. Like I said, I picked up a few times, I overdosed the same day, but I never went back to using every day again. and the last time that I, picked up an overdose and went to jail. That's what began, this process with me, and I've been at it for 3.5 years, but that was May 22nd, 2022. So it takes a few times, but I've just been through all of that, but I don't believe without that first time of being literally locked in a cell, by myself, it was the worst time of my life. And like I said, it still wasn't enough. I still didn't have, all the tools that I have now to not pick up again. But I wouldn't have had any chance unless I went through that process. I mean, if you would have walked by that cell, you would have thought that I was a crazy person. I started hallucinating and hearing voices because I was all by myself. I had all these felonies stacked up, and my mind was like, I can't deal with this. I started to just, like, this isn't real. So I was like looking on the television in the booking cell and thinking like all these crazy things, like, because it was just me and me trying to, get out of that situation. So I kind of checked out of reality, but like physically, from a physical standpoint, I had to get all those things out of my system, and I was very ill for a very long time, physically vomiting, all that, because I was coming off of opiates and I guess it's pronounced benzodiazepines at the same time. And it wasn't fun. I could have, I guess, used some resources in the meantime, because I was left alone for a long time. But, those came after the fact. But, like, if they would have taken me out of the jail that day, there would have been no chance. I would have gone, because the physical symptoms were so severe. And I tried to quit on my own for a year before that, but you stop using it, and 2 days after you're so physically sick, and if you're out on the street, you're just gonna go get it again, And then once I got that high, I said, okay, I'll quit after this, and it was just a vicious cycle. So I literally had to be locked in a room to get all that stuff out of my system. I couldn't do it on my own. So jail definitely saved my life, and I think there's so many people out there that are in that same position. You'll see them on the sidewalks and everything, just, like, what can you do? I really had, my process had to start with being locked in a room to get that out of my system, and then the services, being done in conjunction with that. But if I had the opportunity to go back out on the street, I'd probably be dead today, because I would have gone right back to using. Because like you said, you can't think about anything else. Like, it's almost a physically painful feeling how bad you want the drug. You'll be sitting around family and you want to engage, but you're starting to feel ill, and the only thing you can think about is, how can I get money to feel better, And you don't want to do those things, but you're literally a slave to it, for lack of better words. So I feel like being incarcerated for a period of time is definitely necessary for a lot of people. It's not fun, but you have to get all the stuff out of you before you can even have a chance at trying something new. So, but yeah, I went through all of those things that the arraignments and the withheld findings and the sentencing, and and I advocated for myself a lot, doing the pre-sentencing report and everything. I wrote 16 pages before I went in front of the judge, and that's your only time to really speak. But I feel like I'm intelligent to the point where I can write things really well, so it helped me, advocate for myself. But there's a lot of people that I was in jail with that everything's fine, or like one sentence, and so they're like, oh, they don't care or whatever. So I feel for those people that don't have like the capacity to, or understand, like, this is your one chance to speak for yourself, in that pre-sentencing report. So realizing that people like that need help just as much as I do, even though they can't express it on paper.
Thank you all. Real quick, we have 3 or 4 of these tables. If anybody has an organization or can use these are great. They fold up and they can store easy. So you got to pick them up. There's 3 downstairs or 4 downstairs, so that's good. We do have a podcast studio you can see walking out. We have a radio or a music app, Virginia Breeze. We love everybody that attends these events to follow Virginia Breeze, listen to the commercials we put out there. And if you guys at the county level, Andrew, if you guys have a spot that you'd like to talk about, or any of your organizations, if you want to make a message, it's not there's not millions of listeners, but it's an audience. I'm going to give you a no charge. This program has micro-credentials. Employees, I got to start doing it. I want to get the micro-credential. The more we put it out there, the bigger these conversations get, and the more we can influence our community moving forward. Testimonials we have set up in the back. We like you to take a testimonial video for us. It takes about 30 seconds. just so we can share it. What did you like in the program? What do you do? Who are you? If you need people to call you, let us help you get the word out. We need to build, if you email us, we need to build a list of, I call them consumers, people in the public from 18 years of age up to 90 years of age that would want to attend these Ignite conversations. So we're trying to build a database like that. So if we get 2,000-3,000 names, we can get 30-40 people here for the experts and to make more of an impact. Each of you have pockets. Grab 2 to 5 bagels on the way out. Toasted ones might get a little harder than the untoasted ones, but seriously, please have a bagel before you go. And before you buy anything or go to any doctor, it's got nothing to do with government, go to bbb.org first, do your homework ahead. Don't call us after the fact, because we really, I won't say we don't care, because you did it and you went into an F-rated business without taking advantage of the research we do for free for every consumer in the country. So bbb.org, you will learn a lot and you will enjoy it. So do you guys have any questions, the three of you, what you do for a living for these guys? We got 4 great experts for sure. Anything you need help with or understanding what you're doing?
I don't have any questions per se, but I really just enjoyed this. I feel like I learned a lot that I can take back to what we're trying to build as well in the Greater Health District. More of the connection, that fun workforce, and just, I think when we're able to come together in spaces like this and have conversations and support each other in this space, it makes an impact. I'm actually going to a real life event later on today in Petersburg.
Oh, yay!
For fun, giving out costumes to kids. So again, that support on different ends, and it's not so much of having those type of conversations, but just showing up for people. So I really just appreciate you guys putting this together.
Well, thank you for being the model for our testimonials, because that's exactly what we want you to do over there.
Okay, so don't forget what you said.
That was perfect. So thank you, everybody.
Actually, just a few more things that I want to say real quick. If you scan this QR code, goes straight to our link tree, and that's going to take you to all of our websites, all of the links that we have, our social media accounts, the Credly account that we have that'll take you to the micro-credentialing. Today, you guys received a participation badge. Surprise! So everybody that put their email address on the media release form will be receiving a participation badge that you can also put on your LinkedIn, your Facebook account. It's clickable, and that's a great way to just let everybody know that you participated in something where you answered questions, you listened to experts in the community that came to talk about a very important topic. And then, I think that's it. Yes, also, the testimonials. Please scan the QR code. I left some tips for you guys so that you know how to do it properly. Your testimonials are important to us and to the community because it's the experience that you have here that's going to encourage people to understand why it's important to have these conversations. Bringing awareness to what Andrew does, to what Dr. Scarborough does is really important, and by doing that is feeling comfortable in expressing your experiences and how you've lived with either family members or with yourself going through these things. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. How'd you get out of court? How did this happen?
No, I got lucky.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Congratulations.
I'm not sure, I'm from Hampton, Newport News. That's where I've been to course. But now I live here in Richmond, school and right.
Hey, I've seen you in court for good life.
Yeah, I haven't gone to a real
Hold
one.
on.
Yeah.
We were sitting here and she said, it's the next.
I just wanted to know
Jill, she's the person that said, I know you don't have
she's
sons.
familiar with everything. I have yet to hear about y'all. So I want to hear. Yeah. Let's go over to that you right, tech savvy. I did a little bit of time. When I say a little bit of time, but when I was in Idaho, I did the mentorship inside the prisons, by the officers.
Send that in and then on my
And I
podcast.
didn't do them myself, which helped me grow within, which helped me in terms of that. Like I got out September 7th. Went in. So, but the officer that was there,